Hi, my name is Andrew Primo. I'm a coach at Fortune Ski Club. I'm going to go over some videos about how to tune skis, how to maintain them, and how to set them up. Okay, so the first video that we're going to do is going to be how to set up skis from the factory. This also will apply to some of the skis that you get tuned and ground from this shop. Okay, so we're going to do one on that. We're going to do one on sharpening the skis and one on waxing. Okay, so I'm going to try to make this kind of basic material to show you the tools and the process that I do. There's a lot of rabbit holes you can go down in terms of tuning and different ways to do it, and it can get confusing of what you need to do and what you don't need to be doing and what tools you need. So I'm going to try to do a basic idea of what you should be doing. If you need to look up more information on the process, there's tons of videos out there, and I'll even link to some of them that I think are good. Okay. Ultimately, we want to have the skis set up a certain way, and your job is to kind of maintain them throughout the year to try to keep them at that level, right? So there isn't a day that goes by after skiing where I don't touch up the skis and make sure that the edges are sharp. So that's basically your job, is to try to keep those skis sharp throughout the year, because the athletes aren't going to be able to do what they need to do if they don't have sharp skis. Sorry. So our first step is going to be to try to set up these new skis that I've got here. I can go over some of the tools that we're going to be using and tell you what I'm going to be doing. So first thing we're going to be doing is checking the flatness of the base. We're going to set up the base bevel, and we're going to shape the skis and remove sidewall to get them ready for sharpening and waxing after that. So some of the tools that we're going to be using here. So we've got a good 3-piece vise here. It's best to have a 3-piece vise opposed to a 2-piece vise. This will hold your ski in a lot better. Okay, we've got shop towels, masking tape, file, sidewall removal tool, cut resistant gloves, base bevel guides, Panzer file or body file. We've got a true bar, file cleaner, Sharpie markers, an elastic brake for the brakes and the bindings to hold the bindings back, and a good table, obviously. Okay, so this is what we're going to need for the start of our tuning. Okay, so the skis from the factory, they come pretty good from the start. They're fairly flat. They have a base bevel already put into the skis. Okay, I'll get into the base bevel in a bit. But basically what you want to start doing is to check to see if the skis are flat. There's different ways of doing this. This is a true bar that we use, and different ways of doing it, but we can check to see if there's any light coming through the bottom of the base, to see if there's any light coming through, to see if they're flat. If they're convex, they're going to be hard to get an edge. If they're concave, the skis are going to be hard to get off the edge, and they're going to grip and rail. Okay, so we want to make sure that the bases are flat. Often you'll have some issues in the tips and the tails because of the machines that they use. So what I'll often do is I'll go down the ski like this to see if I can hear any edge. So in the tips here, I can hear metal on metal here. Throughout the ski, it's pretty good. And the tail a bit as well. So another way of doing it is to take the true bar, rub it back and forth. You'll actually see a slight line, and that'll tell you if the bases are flat or not. So Skis from the shop as well, when they get base ground, you're going to want to check them as well, and you're going to want to go through some of this process as well, okay? So your job is to kind of maintain the skis at a level that they need to be at, checking the base periodically to see if there's any issues. Eventually you're going to want to get them ground, usually at the start of the season and midway through. So the new skis that you get, don't grind them. And just check them and get them set up and ready to go. So because we can hear metal on metal in the tips and the tails, we want to fix that. That means that the edges are a bit higher than the base. Okay, so what we're going to do next is get into base bevel. So base bevel, if there's one thing that can be messed up, it's base bevel. You got to be careful with. Base bevel is the #1 factor in terms of performance for the skis. Basically what it is, if you can see this here, is we have the ski and we're going to be applying, you have a flat base here and the edges are going to be at an angle on the base. Okay, so usually that angle is going to be between 0.5 to 1 degree or more. For slalom skiing, generally we're at 0.5 degrees. GS 0.75, and we can go to 1 degree as well for downhill super G, even more sometimes. So generally speaking, yeah, slalom is 0.5, GS is 0.75. When it comes to the younger athletes in U8, Nancy Green, U10, we sometimes want a bit more base bevel, so 0.75 perhaps, depending on the athlete and how strong they are. What basically happens is a 0.5 is very aggressive, so as soon as you tip the ski over, it's going to grab. 0.75 is going to take a bit more time before you tip it over and it grabs onto the ice or the snow. The more base bevel, the easier it is to pivot or steer the ski at the top of the turn. So that's something that we want to develop with the very young athletes. So having a 0.5 doesn't make sense for one of the U8 athletes, let's say. So, but talk to your coach in terms of trying to figure out what the base bevel needs to be. So when we set the base bevel, we don't want to touch it again. It's not like the side edges where we're constantly sharpening them, okay? We don't sharpen the base edges. We set the bevel and we leave it. Okay, so the more we ski, the more that base bevel grows. The more you touch it with a diamond stone or a file, the more that base bevel grows. So set it and leave it, okay? So also get the shops to grind the ski and set the base bevel. I wouldn't recommend getting the skis flat and then applying the base bevel. Get them to do it. Their machines are pretty precise, but you want to follow up and just check them after, okay? One thing to note, if you think that you need a certain base bevel, you can only increase the base bevel, you can't decrease the base bevel. So if you're indecisive between a 0.75 and a 0.5, let's say, get a 0.5, you can always go to a 0.75, but you can't go backwards, okay? So you can't decrease that base bevel. If you go to a 0.75 and you decide you need a 0.5, you got to go back in and get the skis ground flat and get them set up again, okay? So go less and then add more. So I'm going to take, so these ones I want set up at a 0.5 degree, okay? So I'm going to use my base bevel guide and a file. So when we work with edges, it doesn't matter if you work tip to tail or tail to tip. It only matters if you're working on the base. So we're always going to work on this outside edge here, the one away from me, and the file. The tail of the file is always going to be following the front of the file here. So, okay, so we're gonna lay this onto the ski flat, and we're gonna go down and see. I'm not gonna push, but I'm gonna see if it grabs anywhere. So everything is pretty good except for the tips and the tails. So I'm going to take a few strokes down. I'm going to work that tip and the tail a bit. Basically, when I stop hearing metal on metal, the file, that generally means that that base bevel has been set to the angle that I need it to be. Okay. If you start pushing and you start going at it too much, you're going to add more base bevel. Even though it says 0.5 on here, you can add easily 0.75 if you keep on pushing at it and working at it. Okay, so check it, make sure that it's set properly, and then just leave it. Okay, if you need to come back after a day of skiing and there's something not right and you want to add some more base bevel, you can do that after, right? So, but if you go too much on it, then you can't go back. So check it, make sure that it's set properly, and then we're going to be ready for the next step, which would be shaping the skis. Okay, so the next step is going to be shaping the skis. So this is a bit more of an advanced level. Shaping the skis and sidewall removal. This can also be done by the shop. Generally, the shaping of the skis only has to be done once for the ski, and it doesn't need to be done ever again. The sidewall removal, we'll get to it a bit as well. So basically what shaping the skis is, we're going to be shaping the tips and the tails of the ski, and the whole point of shaping the skis and the whole point of sidewall removal is to get rid of any material above the edge that may come in contact with the file when you go to sharpen the skis. So basically, whenever I sharpen my skis on the side edge, I don't want the file to be touching anything but the edge itself. So the tips and tails of the skis, we're looking at maybe 10 centimeters or so in the tips and tails of the ski that we want to shape. So when they make the ski on sidewall construction skis, the sidewalls come very straight and 90 degrees. And as you can see, if I try to put a file on here, especially at an angle, which we always do, a 2 or 3 degree angle on the edge, the file is going to come in contact with the top of the ski. Okay, so what I want to do is when I sharpen the ski, I'm going to be putting an angle on it. So I want to make this 90 degree here angle closer to about a 20 degree like this, the tips and the tails, so that when I go to file this edge here, that the file doesn't come into contact with the top of the ski. Okay, so when we get to sidewall removal, so what that is you have the edge, you have the sidewall, and they have this sidewall step. And again, you can see how if I go to sharpen the ski at an angle, the file is going to come in contact with this sidewall, okay, the sidewall step. So we want to remove that as well, or part of it. Okay, so this may or may not be something that needs to be done, the shaping of the skis. You may want to check to see if whenever you do sharpen the ski, if the file is going to actually touch that, the top tips and the tails. So generally we do it basically as well for, there's a performance factor as well for getting rid of it. So we blend it into the rest of the ski, okay? so you're not going to notice it. It's generally around 20 degrees that we want it again. Okay, so when I look at the ski, I'll be able to see the sidewall step, and it'll disappear somewhere around here, okay? And in the tail, again, it disappears somewhere around here, okay? So this is kind of the general area that we want to be looking at. If I run my finger along here, I can kind of feel where it goes from angle and then gradually goes to like a 90 degree. And that's the kind of the part of the area, okay? Especially here, I can feel it. I got an angle here, and then it goes into about 90 degrees here with the edge. So, okay, so those are the areas that I want to work on. So you don't need to go too wild on this, okay? You don't want to go too crazy and put too much angle and go at it too much that you don't want to touch the edge. You don't want to go into the ski too much as well, okay? So generally we're looking at about 20 degrees when we do this. So there's the sidewall step right here. And right here you can see that there is no sidewall step. And it's pretty much 90 degrees. So we're going to be using this Panzer file for this, okay? So what I like doing is I like using Sharpie markers to try to, so I can see what I'm removing, and then I don't go too far into the edge, okay? So I don't want to touch the edge, and I don't want to go too far down the ski either, okay? So I'm going to kind of mark what areas I need to work on. So my sidewall, again, it stops around here. So I'll mark on the edge of how far I need to work, okay? And I don't want to go, I don't need to go too far into the tip either, okay? And this silver marker is really good because the sidewall is black. So I won't be able to see, but what I'll do is I'll take this silver marker and I'll go over the black part that I need to remove. So when I remove that silver part, I'll know that I've removed the area that I need to remove. Okay, so again, I don't want to go into the edge. So now there's a few ways of doing this. Use a Panzer file. I'm going to set it at about a 20 degree angle, and I'm going to go at the area. Okay. Now, another great tool, this one's actually made by Sidecut. It's a sidewall removal tool, and it's already got an angle set into the, so it's just like a file guide. It's got about a 20 degree angle already set up on the guide. It's a bit slower in the process, but it's a bit more precise. Okay. For this, I want to make sure I don't want to get any filings into the base. So I'll actually cover up the area that I'm going to be digging into, okay, so that I have no chance of messing up my base, okay, so I'm going to do this, and right away, I mean, it's already set to at a bit of an angle, so I don't need to do too much here. Okay, so I've set it up so that there's an angle there now. And what I can do, I can take a file and I can smooth out that area after I'm done, and as well as some sandpaper. I can wrap 200 grit sandpaper on this and follow up and smooth it out nice and smooth, okay? So I'm going to repeat the process for the tail as well for that, okay? Okay, now, so after we've profiled the tips and the tails, or shaped them, next step is going to be sidewall removal, okay? So again, we're removing the material above the edge to get clearance for the file to cut the edge when we sharpen the edges, okay? So the area that we're going to be working on is going to be, if you look at the sidewall above the edge, it ends somewhere around here and here. So right around the area that we shaped with the ski, okay? So that's kind of the area that we're going to be removing. We don't need to go into the tips and the tails because they've been profiled already. And the tips and tails are fairly thin, so we don't want to be going in there as well. So I'll explain it here on the drawing that we have. So if this is the ski, this is the edge, and this is the sidewall step, and this is the sidewall of the ski, and this is the top of the ski, okay? So this is the area that we need to get rid of a bit, okay? So as you can see, if we go to file that edge at an angle, we're going to be going into the plastic sidewall, okay? So if you try to file that sidewall, it doesn't file at the same rate as the edge, okay? So what can happen is you're going to get a negative edge and it's not going to file evenly, okay? So instead of having a 3 degree on the edge, you may have a 2 degree or 1 degree if you leave this in here, okay? So there's different ways we can go about doing it. With the sidewall removal, there's a cutting tool on it, okay? There's a round cutter and a square cutter. I recommend using the round cutter. It's just easier, okay, and less chance of messing things up, okay? So again, you don't have to go too crazy here. You just got to create enough clearance to get that file in there, okay? So the round cutter, so what we're trying to accomplish here is a bit of a dished out like this, okay? So if you have the round cutter, this is kind of what we're going to be doing, okay? So there's different ways of doing it. Like I said, you can remove, I think in the World Cup and everything, they're kind of getting rid of the whole thing and sanding it after. I think doing several strokes with the sidewall cutter and removing a bit of it so that we can get in there with the file is sufficient, okay? So it's going to look something like that, okay? And that's what we're trying to accomplish. So we're going to set the round cutter just above the sidewall step, not touching the edge. So here, I guess it would be. So we don't want to touch the edge. We just want to get rid of this sidewall. So if we have a round cutter, we're going to be placing it somewhere around there, putting it onto the sidewall, taking a few passes and making that sidewall just a little bit lower than the edge, okay, so that we can get that file in there. So I'm going to take my sidewall cutter. There's part of it here that moves the cutter in and out. And you want the cutter on a bit of an angle like this to be able to move the sidewall away, okay? So I'm going to place it onto the ski. I'm going to get that cutter just above the sidewall Okay, so not touching the edge, and just enough over from the sidewall so that we're not touching the edge, and that just removes the sidewall. Okay, so again, we start around here. I'm going to move it a little bit farther up, and I'm not going to apply any pressure until it starts biting. Okay, you don't need to press too hard on it. Let the cutter do the work. Okay. And so we get something like this that comes off. Okay. So some of the sidewalls are different materials. Okay, the race skis are fairly hard material, so they're easy to work and get the material off. Some skis have a very gummy rubber kind of feeling in the sidewall, and that one can skip sometimes, and you can get into some trouble if you press too hard. Okay, so again, I'm going to do another one. And one more. Okay. If you got some old skis, you can practice on them. Okay. It's honestly not very difficult to do. The only way you can really mess this up, again, is just getting rid of too much of that material. So that's the problem with the square cutters. If you remove too much of the material, the reason why that sidewall is there is to hold up the edge. It creates, so if you get rid of it, you're going to have some issues. Okay, so again, base away from me, and that's it. Okay, so after that, we're ready to start sharpening the side edges. Okay, so now this is going to be done because you're only removing a little bit of that sidewall. This may have to be done after several times of sharpening, because that edge is going to eventually go down far enough that it's going to start. You're going to be starting to touch that sidewall bump again. Okay, so keep that handy, and it's going to be something that you're going to have to do once in a while if you don't remove that whole step. Okay, so okay, and we're going to get to sharpening next.